Have you ever played binding chicken and lost? I have. Hey guys, Kelly here at So Much Fun in West Melbourne, Florida, and this is the So Much Fun 321 show. I feel like it's been a while since we've done one, so welcome back. Today we're talking about binding. What is binding chicken, you may ask? Well, it's kind of like bobbin chicken, except instead of running out of thread in your bobbin, you run out of binding before you get all the way around your quilt. And let me tell you, there's nothing worse than putting binding on a king-size quilt and being 3 inches too short. That's very frustrating. So I'm going to tell you how to calculate your binding strips and how much fabric you need, and also a couple of quick little tips and tricks to make sure that you always have enough. You may have a little extra, you may have a whole strip too much, but I'll tell you, I would rather have one strip too many than one strip too few. Okay, so we're going to use a theoretical example, and I have already done the math because you guys do not want to watch me calculating it. So we're going to say, let's say we have a twin size quilt, 72 inches by 90 inches that we need to bind. So how do we calculate how much binding we need? The first thing we do is we add up all 4 of the sides, so 72 plus 90, and then multiply that by 2, or you could just do this 72 plus 72 plus 90 plus 90. Anyway, that comes out to 324 inches in this particular example. Next, we're going to divide by 40. So the width of most quilt fabric is somewhere between 40 to 44 inches. I like to assume that it's the narrowest quilt fabric, and so we're going to divide by 40. And when we divide 324 by 40, we get 8.1. That's how many strips we need. Obviously, we're not going to have 0.1 of a strip, so we're always going to round up to the next whole number, so 9 strips. Here's where my tip comes in. I always add 1 more. Now, we started with 8.1 here, so rounding up to 9 probably would give you enough to take care of what you need extra. But if you have 8.75 and you round up to 9, you're probably not going to have enough if you just stay at 9. So I always just add 1 extra strip. It's 2.5 inches of fabric, y'all. It's not going to break the bank. It's going to save you frustration at 11 o'clock at night. All right, so we've rounded up to 9. We're going to add 1 more. That gives us 10 strips. So for the theoretical quilt we're doing, we need 10 strips of fabric. How do you know how much fabric that is? Well, you guys know how to do this. You take how many strips you need, multiply it by how wide your strip is. Usually it's 2.5 inches, although you can do 2 1/4. I've even done 2 1/8 when I really wanted a narrow binding. So you multiply number of strips times the width of the strip, and that gives you how much fabric you need. So if we did a 2.5 inch binding on our quilt and we needed 10 strips, 2.5 times 10, 25 inches. And then, because we like to round, we're just going to round up to the next 1/8 of a yard. 24 inches is 2/3 of a yard, so we're going to round right up to 3/4. And I think that's all I have for you. That is how you calculate how many strips you need, how much fabric you need, and you can be sure that with this method, you're always going to have enough. You're never going to get right around that last corner and be this much too short. And I do want to mention that a couple of the reasons why, if you just do the basic calculation, it might be a little bit short is because every time you join your strips, you know, you make your little diagonal join, you lose 2.5 inches at each one of those joins. And then also, when you're going around your quilt and you're doing your mitered corners at each corner, you're going to lose somewhere around 1/2 inch, maybe even up to 1 inch, depending on how you do it. So, you know, 10 strips, you have 9 joins, multiply 9 joins by 2.5 inches. I did not do that math, but you can do it. It's a fairly significant number of inches in length of your binding that you lose just by joining those strips together. So that's why I always add the 1 extra strip. You might not need it, but chances are you might, and you'll be happy you had it. Okay, that is all I have for y'all. Let me know if you thought this was interesting or useful, and I hope it helps you when you're next doing your bindings. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.